So something about your perspective or your understanding of where things are, or how it has impacted you personally, and then we'll take some questions and answers.
All right. So my assumption is that you know more or less from the news, from the media, as much as you can gather of the situation now in Israel. So I'm not going to give you inside news or the things you haven't heard, and this is not my approach to the situation at all. The situation in Israel is an escalation of something that was there for many years. So it's nothing I was not surprised, not in this sense when it started. I've been thinking of how to approach this subject, especially since we are streaming live, and this is a sensitive subject. And my approach to it is different, I feel, at least maybe, from most of what I hear and what I come across. I see a story, and we were talking, I've had a conversation this afternoon with some of the people, and they asked me, well, but how does God see it? And this is for me the question. How would God see it? And the situation is that in any fight or in any quarrel or dispute between people, each side is sure that he is right. Is simply sure that he is right. And I always take it as a given that when I'm arguing with someone, he knows that he is right, and I know that I'm right. We'll never come to any terms. The situation in Israel is no different. Now, I am involved in it in the fact that, first of all, 7th of October, I received the group, and you need just explaining of how my personal connection to it and how it influences me, or influences and influenced me. 7th of October, I wake up in the morning. My fiance's mother came to me and she says, oh, that's quite a day to start a tour, isn't it? Because I was supposed to receive the first tour of the season before noon. And I said, what's going on? And I opened the news and I see immediately videos of pickup trucks with terrorists on them in Sderot, the town in which my father works. My family lives half an hour drive from the Gaza border, and that's where I grew up. Now, I remember already as a child that I had this in mind. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought, I'm so lucky to be born on this side of the border. And how would I react or how would my life look like if I was born on the other side of the border, just half an hour away? Given that fact, and I said that something that was in my mind since I was a child, I was thinking I would probably react the same. Not the same that I will go on a pickup truck, but the same kind of hatred that I will have for the people outside, because this was my reality. This is the only thing that I know of. That's the only thing that I see. And it's hard for us to go into the mindset of someone that lives on completely the opposite side of our daily life, of our reality, and try to understand them despite their hatred towards us and maybe our hatred towards the other party. So on October 7th, when I see these pictures, I knew we are done. I knew I never saw these pictures before. And I saw horrible pictures in Israel. And I know you already know, okay, that's just another thing, or okay, now this is gonna take a while, and this is gonna be, if there's one, there are more, if there are more, that's bad. And this was a holiday, it was Shabbat, and I start to get more and more input, and I'm on my way now to the airport to pick up a group that was in the air when everything happened, everything was going on. I come to the airport. On the way to the airport, I get a message that there was just an alarm going off at the airport. So there were rockets shot towards the airport, and I'm like, okay. Quite a welcome to the people. And I come to the airport, and I just moved from my apartment, and I had some things in the back of the car, and I pulled off my suitcase, and I had 3 light bulbs just on the seat, and all of them fell in the midst of the entrance to the airport, like where all the cars are stopping. And if you've been there, you know it's closed. So have you ever heard the light bulb falling down and okay, explosion? Poof, poof, poof. And like, okay, that's not gonna be, you know, a normal week, and I'm all prepared, and the group starts coming out. They came in 2 different flights. The first 11 comes out, and I tell them, well, this is the situation. That's what I know, and here is a safe area. So we wait here for the rest of the group. Another 42 coming. All in all, 53 people that are just now arriving from Atlanta, and I need to host them. I told them immediately, this is. We don't know, but from my understanding, this is not going to be over soon, but we're going to take it step by step. I will not now go through all the story, but I was listening to God in the lead, because this was a situation that I knew nothing about. Nobody prepares you for such a situation. I talk to the office, I work with an office, and I tell them, you know, and they say, well, we don't know, you decide. And I asked the tour leader, says, well, whatever you recommend, you know. And everybody's like kind of looking up to me, so I look up and say, okay, God, we'll take it step by step. And this is what we did. Long story short, 5 days later, we took them out to Jordan because all flights were canceled. And as they leave the border, my fiance picks me up. She was just, the border is Bet Shean, up south from the Sea of Galilee. She was just in a funeral of a friend that died on the attack on October 7th, and she picks me up. And we say, okay, we're going to the family. We're going to stay with the family. That's the best now. Because we just moved to live about 4 miles from the border with Lebanon, and nobody knows if an attack is going to come also from the north. So we stayed there. Now, at the beginning, I must say, I'm with the group, and on one hand, I have 53 good Christians to take care of. On the other hand, I have friends that lost, and friends that are missing, and friends of friends. And anyway, in Israel, it's so small, so you always know someone. And every night, I will go to my room and break in tears, because there's so much pain in it. And the pain that I felt was not only for this horrible, horrible attack, but also for what is yet to come. Because I knew if it starts like that, it's going to be coming much worse for the other side. And I hear people saying there's no innocence there. I beg to differ, you know. And to broadly paint everything, you know, everyone is not something that I can agree with, because like I said, as a baby that was born on this side of the border or being born on the other side of the border, you don't have much choice of what they put into you. And I grew up on the Israeli side, and I left, as I told you, and I traveled around for a long time to get the understanding from different sides of how each one experience reality. And we all experience reality from different angles. So you can say it's black, and I say, well, it's brown, but from your angle it looks black, and from mine it looks brown, and we'll both be right. And this brings me up always, so the first story that comes to my mind is the story of Isaac and Ishmael, or Ishmael and Isaac, because when Ishmael is kicked out of his father's house and sent into the desert without even a bottle of water for the path, I feel his pain. I imagine how it feels like as a person that is sent away from his father's house in favor of his just born, like newborn brother. And this, like in Hebrew we call the Arabs or the Muslims, more correctly, the Ishmaelites. And the story is the same, and the pain that they feel is the same. And if we don't understand that, then we can always judge them as just evil people. Just evil people. And we can do that, and we can say, okay, we will destroy them, but this will never happen. Like, we will never exterminate it, and even if we exterminate it, I don't believe it will solve the problem, personally. And they want to exterminate us, and I don't think they'll do that. So what it creates just more and more pain. And when I look at God, looking at everything from above, and these are all God's children, whether we like it or not. All God's created. So I'm not the one who will choose a side, because on these sides I don't find, I don't affiliate with each one of the sides. I don't agree with any of the sides, and I don't think that this is about choosing the right sides to be with, because the picture that I have is Jesus, we just talked about, Jesus and Peter sitting there, and Peter said, feed my lambs. Now, when you're feeding a lamb, when a shepherd takes the lambs to the to pasture, to graze, does he takes them to the grazing land and say, okay, now eat this, don't eat that, don't eat this is poisonous, eat just that? No. He takes them to the grazing land, and he knows that they know internally what's good for them, what is right and what is wrong. And we are lambs, and I found it in myself that I am a lamb that many times wanted somebody to tell me what is right, tell me what is wrong. But that's going outside. Now, I know that just like I had on October 7th, like it's like when it's money time, I don't have anyone to ask. Nobody will give me the answer. When it's money times, it's only inside that I will know what to do, what is right, what is wrong. And it's just acting. And it's not black and white. I could go, and do many different things on this path. So it's not about which side, because that's like it created a picture like, okay, you just choose the right side, and then you're like, okay, I'm with this side, and I will go with it till the end. But then you basically take your inner authority, which comes from God, and give it to somebody else. And I don't know that they follow God so Christianly, I would say, this way or the other. And I said it's a sensitive subject, and we want to see Jesus return. We want him to come and say, you did well. So my comfort and my trust is in my honesty. And like Jesus expressed at Gethsemane, and then he changed. He found the power. So he felt like this, and he said it, but then he took it. So he said, I don't want it, but then he did it. So you can be honest with God. He says, I hate these fellows, and then maybe it will change. And you can say, whatever comes, and there's a lot of pain. And what I see is that there is mutual pain, and as long as the two factions, or 3 or 4 or 5, or all the factions will see one another and recognize each other's pain, because I've said it over lunch, if you, I guess most of you are parents, when your children come to you and they say, well, he beat me, and said, no, he started it, and he did this, and do you sit your children and says, okay, let's solve it. Who started it? Who is the right one from these children? Would it solve anything? Does it matter? Because he said, well, he started it today, but yesterday he did this. Oh, and the day before he did that. And 2 years earlier, and if I can tell you now the history of the land of Israel and tell you how everything, but it's not about being right or correct. It's about being wise in heart, and recognizing that the solution will not come from here. They say it's a two-state solution, it's a one state, it's like everyone needs to go, and we wait for the asteroid to come. I don't know. What's the solution I know will not come from here, because man-made problems are coming from here, and every time we think, oh, we're going to solve this one, we create a different problem that we could never think of. So this is my approach shortly, and I can go on and on, but I think I hope that this paints the picture of how I see the situation. And I hope I don't offend anyone by saying that.
I'm offended.
Except of you, Jerry.
I know you have lots of friends from Christians, Muslims, Jews, and when we were there, you just treated everyone with such great respect and equality. When we were in Jericho, you introduced me to a man who was, at one time, Arafat's chauffeur and had been a sniper.
Right.
And a pretty prominent person.
Right.
Has become a Christian, has worked for peace between Jews and Muslims, or Arabs and Jews, Israelis, and lives in Jericho, a predominantly Muslim community, and yet is tremendous and is a very strong Christian. So, how does that happen? How does someone who is a minority person live in a community that's so different? What allows that? What happens in that situation? Like for him, how can he live there in such peace?
So the person we are referring to, his name is Taysir Saadeh, or Tess Saadeh, and nowadays he lives in Kansas City.
That makes it easy.
Yeah. And his story is a story of redemption that is like one of the most amazing stories I came across. And you can get his book that is called Once an Arafat Man.
It's a great book.
Yeah. And I highly recommend it because, and he wrote a second book, which is if you want to understand the so-called enemy, he wrote a book that is called The Mind of Terror, which talks about the Arab or Muslim mindset, because he knows it, because he grew up. His family was actually expelled from Gaza in the war of 1948. And he spent so he grew up in Qatar. And after that, when he was about 16, he heard Yasser Arafat, that was the head of the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, speaking out there in the streets, recruiting soldiers to join his army. He wanted to join. Like, you need to understand that he grew up in the Arab world. If you have no ground, or if you've given up your ground, you're a disgrace. This is why many Arabs themselves look at the Palestinians and says, you are a disgrace. You are, And we need to understand this mindset of the Islam. And one of the things that I try to do also on tour is to try and explain what it means to grow under a Muslim culture. The Muslims came from tribes that lived around Arabia, nowadays Saudi Arabia, and they were tribes. Now, to survive in the desert, you need to stick together as a tribe. And you need to stick together around a spring or a well. And this well is your life. So if somebody is making a mistake, he's dead. There's no right or left. There's you're either with us or you're dead. And that's tough. People who live in the desert needs to be, okay, first of all, probably pushed from society, just like Ishmael was, and protecting the water, just like in the story of Ishmael and the well in Hagar. So this is the mindset that is a very strong community. So if you are not with us, you are disgraced and you are dead. So talking with Muslims about Christ, for instance, is very difficult if you will find them and talk about it with friends around. But when I talk one-on-one with friends, we can come to some agreements that otherwise will not be there. In the Quran, Isa, which is Jesus, appears, I think, 3 times. His mother Mary appears more times than that, and she's the only woman in the Bible that appears by name, and she's regarded as holy. So there's some things you can really talk about and understand, and Jesus is actually supposed to come in the end of days, also according to the Islam. So how many of you do that? Many things we don't know about our neighbors, and that's all right. I also didn't know that. So first of all, this mindset that is like the community, the family, and a lot of codes of honor. So when he grows up in Qatar and without house, and everybody's making fun of them, or not fun, even like pushing them and persecution and belittling them for how they lost the land, it creates a lot of hatred and a will for vengeance. So his father didn't want him to join Yasser Arafat. He did join. He escaped on his own to Jordan, and he became a sniper, and later on he became Yasser Arafat's personal driver. At some point he had to escape, and he managed to get to the United States of America. And he did all of these different works, busking tables and so on. Eventually he met a person, he befriended him, and this person eventually, it's like really long story short, led him to Jesus. But what allowed him to lead him to Jesus is that actually the person, Tessa Ada, actually had a vision of Jesus' hands above him. And that allowed him to change his heart overnight. And then he understood it's all about the hatred from childhood, because believe it or not, Israel, which is in the midst of the Middle East, we learn very little Arabic in school, only literature Arabic, so we cannot really speak it or use it to talk with. Well, we are surrounded by 1 billion Arab neighbors, so how can there be understanding? How can there be? My grandmother, who came from Morocco, had Arab neighbors around, and they lived in amazing neighborship. This is how she tells me from her memory as a child, that the Arab neighbors will come in the holidays with sweets and celebrate with them. So it's possible. But, and again, this is like historically there was a lot of misusing of people's belief, cynically by the leaders. That I will not go now, but if you want names, so search the name Mufti Haj Amin al-Husseini. Haj Amin al-Husseini was the leader, the Arab leader during the British Mandate, and he created or made this whole conflict a religious conflict, which was not. He himself was insane, and he was sick with a very common disease that is known as Jewish hatred and anti-Semitism. And he eventually, after the Brits kicked him out of the land of Israel, he went and he teamed up with Adolf Hitler. So he was the one who convinced all the Arabs and turned them against the Jews in a religious manner, and it's not fair because you're using people's religious belief to divert their hatred and divert their feelings and blame others. And then of course they will say, no, we don't want to live next to, because there's no trust. And when there's no trust, how can you live? And when there's no trust and no common language, do I need to tell you about how it is when people come from different countries and cannot speak to the locals in their own tongue and don't understand one another, and how much death and pain this can create, only for the next future generations to look to the past and say, oh, what have we done? So, as you said, I have good Arab, Muslim, Christian, Druze, like I have Muslim friends. And I say friends because I will give them a call now and I say I need something, he will be the first one to come. And they will give their heart to me because they feel, first of all, that I respect them and I don't judge them. And then we can live together, there's no problem. But once you turn it into a religious and people, want to be good. That's, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we'll open up. Anybody have any questions that they want to ask?
Did your parents move away from being so close to God?
Let me repeat it.
Yeah, please.
Did your parents move far away from
Leave the Gaza area.
leave the area of Gaza?
No, my father, but luckily because it happened on a Saturday, my father was not at work, and they have another place in the north, so they were there for a while, and right now they are in between, sometimes here, sometimes there, and they're considering or not planning to take the summer away a bit from Israel. I have family in Europe, so they will probably be there.
Israel today is basically a secular nation. It is not what we would call like an American big Christian nation. And yet, I often wonder if there was a handful or more in Israel today who know the scriptures enough of what is revealed in the Old Testament times, yet to be fulfilled. Do they believe that the prophecy will come true? I understand that they're also building materials together for the possible new temple to be built. The temple can't be built with the gold domes right now. They have to torn down, or they have to go to the northwest of the side of that site. So the question comes, is Israel living somewhat in the light of the prophecy that's yet to be fulfilled, or are you looking more in terms of saying, no, God is done with Israel, he's only going to work with the church?
Okay.
You're going to repeat that?
I'm going to interpret that.
Yeah.
In 2 sentences. Israel is, we understand that there is a lot of Israel is secular. A lot of Jews who live in Israel are secular and not practicing Jews. So that's over here. We've talked a lot about this third temple that's going to be, that people who look at prophecy and say there will be a third temple, and when the third temple is built, then that will sort of usher in the millennium that's going to move toward the coming of Christ. And so I think his question, based on those kinds of things, is God, well, his question was, is God working through Israel in the things that are happening in Israel to move toward that? Is God working through believers to move toward that end? Kind of what's your take on that?
Okay. So, for my understanding, as I said earlier today, I've studied the history of the last 5,000 years actually in Israel with more detail as we go. We need to understand that the Israelites or the Jews never forgot who they were, okay, as a people, as a nation. And there's no other nation in the world that after almost 2,000 years out of the land, suddenly, like in a press of a button, all returned to their land, claiming it back, managing to start their own autonomy over the land. And not only that, the Jews were scattered all around the world, assimilated wherever they were, whether it's South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, Arabia, all these places, Yemen, Ethiopia. There's some people in Japan, I think, that claim to be Jewish. So there's like all around the world there are people, and eventually they all come to Israel, and now they need to work together. So look at God's working here, taking the chosen people, the Israel nation is Israel, assimilating them to the whole world, and then bringing them back to the country. Now, I believe God works through all of us, And there are people, like you said, there are people who are working towards building a third temple. There's the Temple Institute. They have plans, architectural plans to the last detail, ready to be executed. They have their clothes and their drums ready for the day that this will happen. So whether I believe it or not, or whether we are certain that really the construction of the third temple will bring to the coming of Jesus, that's, I think, more personal. But I definitely see something that we would have never seen before, and nobody could have planned. And as I said earlier, my understanding and my belief is that the year 27 AD is the year that Jesus was crucified, meaning 3 years from now it will be exactly 2,000 years. Now, is that just a coincidence that all these things have been taking place right now? I don't believe in coincidences, and my life tells me otherwise, that everything is very well planned. Does it matter what I think about it? It will happen either way. So whatever's going to happen in God's plan is going to happen either way. I want to be straight with God, so I'm honest with God. And if today I don't believe in it, I will express it to God. And if tomorrow I find that I believe in it, I will express it to God. But I think, again, it's personal, and there's a way to get there. I don't think that I can believe something that I don't believe in. Or not just me. I don't think anybody can believe something they cannot believe in. Even if they will say, I do believe. It can only come truthfully. So the truth is what it is, and that's my take on it. And I say, I watch and I express and have my relationship with God. I trust and find more trust, actually, in this relationship, while seeing everything falling apart. Okay, my country is, it becomes more and more difficult to live in Israel, I would say, for many people who are not on each side of these extremes.
You know, when you said something about Jews in Japan and Asia and South America and everything who are returning, because it's interesting you said that, because there are a number of passages in the Old Testament that talk about my people will return, or I will gather my people, right. I will gather my people back, which has happened all throughout history, but really does seem to be happening in these last generations.
Yeah, and it's not like nobody tried to exterminate the Jews. They survived through all of it and gotten stronger.
Yeah. Okay. Steve. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
He's got a microphone.
I want to be careful how I say this. In our self-estimation, do we as Christians tend to be inclusive or exclusive? That is, we are right and you are wrong, or we are all right. Do Jews tend to be inclusive or exclusive of their religious beliefs? Do Muslims tend to be inclusive or exclusive? And does God tend to be inclusive or exclusive?
Can you repeat that for me?
Yes. In the idea of being inclusive or exclusive. Do Christians tend to be inclusive or exclusive? Do Muslims tend to be inclusive or exclusive? Jews? And what about God? In your perspective of things.
Inclusive or exclusive of what? I don't think I understood it.
Of others, people from the outside?
I'm Christian, I'm right.
Okay,
You're not Christian, you're wrong.
right.
That's exclusivity.
Mm-hmm.
Inclusivity says that God is God of all. I would say that our birth, no matter what your nationality, that you're God's child by parentage.
Okay.
And this confrontation between, in my opinion, between this exclusivity versus this exclusivity cannot be of God. I don't. There are those, I'm sure, who disagree with that. That's okay.
Yeah. Any response to?
So I'm not sure how to respond. Like I understand what you mean. I don't understand maybe the question to me. If I am inclusive or exclusive, or what do I think if they are exclusive or inclusive, or yeah. So did you know? Did you?
Trying to figure out how to ask that. I'm going to start at the end. I'm going to start at the back side of that question.
The most important question is God inclusive or exclusive? That's the crux of it.
The God that you have experienced and the God that you follow.
Mm-hmm.
Do you sense that this is a God who is inclusive or exclusive? What has been your experience with God?
I say this, so like you cannot choose right like the terms or your circumstances of where you were born. And some people manage to, some people have more choice and more is like opportunities to get to, like Tess that eventually came to the United States and managed to find Jesus through this man. Now, what about, and this was a question that many Christians have asked like centuries ago and went all around the road in missionaries, right? To give the opportunity for everyone. But I would say that God worked through me because I was honest about the way I lived, and I was not influenced so much from my social circumstances or what other people would think about what I do. Well, to the extent that I knew, and as the more I do it, the more God shows me, well, yeah, go on. So for me, I believe the God of truth and the God of love, and for me, love equals truth, because God is love and love is truth. So this is the trio that I see. So when I meet a Muslim, for instance, a friend, and he sees me, he doesn't care for my religion. He doesn't so would I judge him? Would God come and say, well, you didn't listen to this missionary, or you saw all these churches and you didn't convert, so you're out? It's hard for me to imagine such a God, honestly. I think, so what I think is, and what I read, how I read the Bible, is that there is only one judge, and he's sitting on the throne. So it's not for me to judge who is in and who is out, because that's actually the final lesson in John 21, when Peter asks, and what about him? And he says, that is not for you to decide. It is not for you to check. It's not for you to care. If I choose him not to perish until I return, that it's not anything with you. You do you, he'll do him, and I'll be the judge. That's how I read Jesus. Okay.
I have a two-part question. One, you are a tour guide along with another 1,000 or more in Israel. And what do you do when suddenly there aren't any tourists? And secondly, when we went into Bethlehem and Nazareth, Palestinian areas, what are they doing with no tourists to be able to survive, to have food on their table, to do medical, to take care of their families? What's happening to society, your side of society, and the ones that are inside Israel? What's happening to their society?
Thank you for this question. Did everybody get this? Yeah. So first of all, as a tour guide, and as you said, there are more than one. So it depends on each. Some tour guides have like a second job, because in Israel unfortunately, we are used to every now and then have because the first thing that gets hit when there is a problem in Israel, whether it's COVID or a security problem, is tourism. Tourism, people get worried, they cancel their tour, or they will postpone it. So that's the downside of it. So they go and do another job. Like during COVID, I personally got some unemployment benefits from the government because of how I work, but many of them that work independently had no income. And they would have to either find a different job, change and try to give lectures online and be as creative as they could, use their savings, which is more or less what I do now, except the support that I'm getting. And I stopped getting support from the state a couple of months ago. So this is, when there is no tourism, there is no tourism. So you can say right now I'm on tour and I come here and I talk here. The second thing is, or the second question is also a very good question, and that's something that's actually very close to my heart, because I have many friends in the industry that right now, and specifically you said about Bethlehem, Bethlehem has a Christian population that is decreasing because when they don't have tourism, and they shrink. And it's not easy to be a Christian in a land that is fought over but Jews and Muslims, all the time. So many Christian youngsters who have an opportunity to go and study and do something abroad will go and do that. And they live, and they shrink, and they shrink. And every hit, every blow, people they decide to close their shop, and that's it. So one of the things that I actually, in Bethlehem, there are a few shops, and what they do is art for pilgrims. They do olive wood artwork, and you saw some of these this morning here. And I brought as a gift for Jerry and Kim that are hosting me a beautiful piece from there. And I've asked Jerry if you can, and if people are interested, to send the website of this shop that is supporting not one and not two, but 70 different families in Bethlehem, Christian families that are supported by this shop that works as a cooperative, because they have to stick together to survive. And whenever there's a war, there's a blow. So I'm in contact with them. It's not easy, and as I said, I told them that when I come here, I will tell about them. So you actually just
good segue.
Yeah.
Yes, and I will make that. We'll put that in our publication, that website.
So, thank you for caring. Yeah.
So what would the Christians in Israel want from us, their brothers and sisters here in the U.S.?
What do the Christian in Israel want from you? to shop in there. It wasn't clear? No. Well, I pray for God's justice, and I pray for God's kingdom to come. And apart from that, as I said, if we can support them, and this is how I try to bring them, and he ran into an open door, because this is something I wanted to talk about. That's really very helpful. And this is not for no reason that every time a group comes to Israel, we will take them and give them the opportunity to shop there, because one of the things is, especially in the modern world, we are, that you have Amazon and eBay and you can get everything so cheap. We forget that the money is our way to contribute and strengthen. And you buy it in Amazon or AliExpress, but where does this money goes to? And I care more of whom I'm shopping from than if it's a bit cheaper or not. And if you want, they do amazing handwork art and trying to earn their daily bread. So.
And I will say, when you order things, we found this in Jericho. You took us to this shop, and I found this medical cream kind of thing that was great. And we've ordered it several times, and they've shipped it, and it's always been very reliable, very safe. So sometimes you think, is it going to come back? But we've always had good success.
Their service is incredible, because they know that this is an issue, of course. So I've never had a problem with them. They will take care of everything until you're 100% satisfied, 110.
Kathy, I think you had a chick.
Yes.
I may or may not need this, but I'm using it. We face a problem in our own country here, because we have groups of people, political groups or whatever, that don't agree on fundamental values. And that is the foundation of any society. You've got to agree on the fundamentals, some basic set of values. What set of values could you say that the Arabs, the Muslims, the Armenians, and the Jews share?
When I talk with my friends, whether they be Muslim, Armenian, or Christian, or Jews, and I consider my friends to be of a loving nature and accepting nature, that believe in co-living, because, I believe it's the only way. We believe in the one God, and the God of love, and the God of justice. And we inherently believe that what you do internally will influence the world outside. So demonstrate the love of God. We know it through Jesus. And I see, it might not be easy for some to hear, but I see it with my Muslim friends, I see it with my Armenian, Christian, Jewish friends, that they demonstrate it, because inside, when you know love, you know Jesus. So that's how that's what, and it's very basic maybe, and like a simple answer, but I think that the truth should be accessible and simple for the most simple-minded to grasp. And again, unfortunately, is what I said before, we have like the force hungry, or those that are hungry for force are manipulating society one against the other and, well, igniting mistrust between all parties. Yeah.
Can I add a line to that? We were talking about Tess a while ago, this guy who was the
Arafat's driver.
the Air France driver, who became a Christian, and in his book he talks about going back to Gaza, he and his wife, and they opened up a kindergarten.
Right.
And there was a point in the story where a group of terrorists pulled up in I think it was Hamas, pulled up in a pickup truck, came in with the intent to destroy the kindergarten. And when the parents found out what was happening, they rallied and pushed them out and said, and they made them get back on their truck and drive off, because they said, this couple, they're here to provide for our children, and that's what's important to us is our family, and we don't want you kicking them out because they're doing something good for us. Which, when I read that said to me, awakened to me that there are a lot of people in Gaza who just want to live peaceful lives, who may not be supportive of Hamas, but are living under that. And I think that value of family, whether you're Muslim or Jew or Christian, is one that holds us or can unite us, because we all want the best for our children, and that love is in the midst of that.
The name of his organization, by the way, I will mention here, is Seeds of Hope. And the idea that he invests is in, like you said, kindergartens and school, to educate the children, Muslims and Jews, about Jesus' values. And I think that this is like the core. This is the core. Like when we need to look at our children and leave them something that they can be proud of us later in the future. Yeah. And there are people in Gaza who disagree with Hamas, and there are people in Israel who disagree with the government, and we saw it in the revolts in Israel. And the problem actually within Israel, and also within the Palestinians, in my opinion, is that they are divided. Divided. And this is what brought to the destruction of the temple 2,000 years ago, and the destruction of the Jews, is that the people were divided. And the ones who eventually brought, not the ones, it's actually not the ones, but everybody was divided. There were zealot groups that will push people for war, and this is what happens right now. So history is bound to repeat on itself unless we gain and learn the lesson. Like we said earlier, if we try to solve the same problem over and over again with the same solution, and I said before, a mind solution, like the mind can solve this, we need to shift, I believe, to shift our perspective, shift our approach from a mind approach to a heart approach. And whenever you see a person, and that's the thing, like I must say personally, I will hear a person, whether he's an Arab from here, a Jew from there, a Christian from here, when I listen to this person, I just feel his pain. I just feel his pain, and I understand him. Even if I don't agree with what he says, I understand, because due to his circumstances, this is what he'll think. This is of course what he will believe in. How could you do different when you have such circumstances? But I see him from the heart, not from my mind, because from my mind I will say, oh, come on, but if, and then I start arguing with him, it will never end. I feel his pain, I accept it, even if I don't agree with it. And this is Jesus' way for me, because I say, okay, I see your point, and I feel your pain, even if I don't agree with it. And I don't even need to say it out loud. I feel his pain. And maybe a few days later, he will come to me and says, you know what, I have thinking about it. Because he felt accepted. When the other side doesn't feel accepted, this would just keep on banging forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And this is what's happening now. And we don't need to agree, we just need to learn to listen. the pain of one another, that's beneath all this. And this is hard. This is hard. This is difficult.
I think you've hit on something, and that is a lack of respect.
Right.
And I think my opinion is we're seeing that in our country. We're seeing it in your country. I really think we're seeing it internationally growing, a lack of respect and an inability to listen, an inability to care or concern or to be empathetic. It's my, like you've described, it's my way, or it's not, or it's not. And sometimes for me that becomes overwhelming. How do you turn that? But then I go back and I think about Jesus, who started with a dozen people, a dozen people, and just laid it out for them. You love and you respect and you welcome and you care for, and it's up to me, it's up to you, it's up to everybody in this room to do our part.
Right. This actually reminds me of the Good Samaritan, and he sees this man, a Jew, that is there in pain, and he just says, I'll just help him with his pain, and that's it,
Thank you for sharing about the land, the part about the land, because that brings a lot of perspective. When someone doesn't have land and they've given that up, and you're fighting, the Middle East is about land. A big part of it is about land.
Yeah.
So thank you.
But having your right place in the world, and like as again, Ishmael and Isaac, like to feel that you have a place in God's kingdom for you, that gets us fighting.
I'm going to, we're going to take one more question. Somebody.
I just simply wanted to know how we can be specifically praying for you at this, it's a new journey for you, but it's also disruptive of what you've kind of planned on. But how can we specifically be praying for you at this time and in your future?
The first thing that comes.
How can we be praying for you?
Yeah, thank you for this question. So my only wish is actually to serve God, and that God will find, like, especially now when there are no tours, there are no pilgrims, and that God will find other meaningful ways for me to serve His people. And that's it. Yeah. Thank you.
Can I ask one more question? Would your Arab Muslim friends agree with Jesus that what the greatest commandment was?
Yes. Love thy neighbor, and to be a good neighbor. And this is what I feel from my neighbors, because they are my neighbors. And I lived now in the Galilee for almost a year, and I had Christian Arabs and Muslim Arabs and Druze and Jews, and I felt good neighbors, good neighbors that had respect and felt respected. And especially in such a dark time, when we recognize one another, and they see me and I see them, and I find hope. I find love. And this is, we have in common, like you said, the Jews, the Christians, the Muslims, about love thy neighbor and respect your neighbor. Respect. Just, that's it.
Thank you. So, as we leave, 2 or 3 things that we want to do. This week I will, in our mail out, I'm going to send you the name of this book that we've been talking about. because it is an amazing book, and it gives you a great perspective, and especially on one man's journey. It's worth reading. So I'm going to pass out. Also, I'm going to send out the link to the Christians who live in Bethlehem, the artisans, so that if anybody wants to purchase something, that you can have an opportunity to do that. We're going to pray for you for the very thing that you have asked for. And also, if you would like to do he's not going to like this. If you'd like to do a financial gift for Eschar, and you're prepared to do that, may be prepared to do that this evening, just leave it on the pew, and somebody's going to pick it up as soon as Chris will pick it up. As soon as the service is over. If you say, I'd like to make a contribution, but I'm not ready to do something, bring it to the office between now and Wednesday, and we'll make sure that he passes that on. So if you feel led to do that and you'd like to do that, you can. And then I'm going to pray, and you just play here for a minute while we mingle around or something, all right? We want to hear you, your heart, okay? So let's pray for this guy. He taught me something. Wait, before you do that, he taught me something. Stand up. That when you hug, see, we always kind of hug this direction. But if you hug this way, it is
heart to heart.
Heart to heart. So now we have learned a new way to hug, okay? On that side. Let's pray for you. God, we pray for this journey and pray for this man who has such a wonderful and a humble heart, a servant's heart, who is just so evident to us, who wants to love you and wants to share that love, your love, with others around him, and wants to do it in a way that will bring honor to you. And I pray that whatever these next chapters hold for him, it will be exactly that. And that he will know that you are working through him and in him, and that things are happening because of him, and lives are being touched because of him. And most of all, that hearts and lives are being changed because of his impact in this world. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity for him to be here and guide his steps and his path in these days to come, and make it very clear to him what you have in store. For it's in your name we gather and rejoice with this friend. Amen.
Thank you.